listening to the Marriage Clinic podcast, a podcast on love, marriage, and personal development. Our purpose is to inspire and equip you with knowledge and skills to enable you to have lasting and fulfilling relationships. Now your host, Joshua Morgray.
Welcome to the Marriage Clinic podcast. This is an amazing podcast. It's a podcast about love, marriage, and your personal development. And I am your host, Dr. Joshua Morgray. And a lot of you like to call me Uncle Josh. And I like to hear you call me Uncle Josh because I feel that kind of gives us a closer relationship. Today, we are going to discuss a new subject. As you know, we try to alternate between topics. If we have one postmarital, then we go to a premarital. So this is a bit more premarital. And it has an interesting title, which will be more relevant to people who are probably in Western Africa. How to spot marriage material. How to spot marriage material. 7 questions to ask. How to spot marriage material. 7 questions to ask. So here we're going to be talking about what you should know about a relationship what you should know about the next person before you begin to date them, or questions you should ask to determine if the person you want to say yes to or want to propose to will be the right kind of person for you, and will that relationship end in marriage. So I'm talking about how to spot marriage material. Let me explain. When I talk about spotting marriage material, I'm not discussing when you are dating for the fun of it. Normally, when people are in a relationship, when they are teenagers or especially in their very early 20s, it's more about having fun and someone to hang out with and where are we going to be. But when it comes to the period where you know you want to settle down and you are considering a relationship that's not going to be trial and error, but rather a relationship that's going to lead to marriage, then this is the podcast for you. How to spot marriage material. On this journey, I'm going to give you 7 questions to ask yourself. 7 simple questions you should ask yourself. And when you ask yourself these 7 questions, it's going to enable you to make a deeper dive into who the person is and apply a lot more thinking to the dating process instead of emotions. You can't answer these questions if you've met the person and you want to propose to the person by next week. These questions do not help you for those who want a short. I've met her, she looks nice, we are in the bus, I don't want her to get off the bus and I haven't proposed. So after 30 minutes, hey, do you want to be my girlfriend? Or after being on the flight, hey, no, I'm not talking about that. If you've met someone and you're getting to know the person, these are 7 questions that will help you along that journey where you can make a decision. Is this a serious person I should be in a relationship with? And the first one is, how do our personalities match? Think about it. How do our personalities match? Can we handle each other's differences? Does their temperament gel well with my temperament? Do we get along? Do we actually like each other? So you see, well, there are 4 temperaments, right? We have the extroverted temperaments, which are the sanguine and choleric. Then we have the introverted temperaments, which are the phlegmatic and the melancholic. Now, what you need to understand is that the temperament affects how you express yourself, how you deal with life, how you deal with all the things that come your way, and how you relate with people. So the temperament is the way a person reacts to situations and how a person expresses their emotions, okay? I've mentioned the 4 temperaments that we have. And now, you listening to this right now, you dominantly have one of these temperaments. Now, if you dominantly have one of these temperaments that has its strengths and weaknesses, the person you choose to date or decide to settle down with for the rest of your life will also have a dominant one. And not all temperaments gel well with each other, especially without training. If you want a detailed expression of it, I share it in my book, Secrets to Love and Staying Married, where I deal with temperaments and how they gel. But for instance, a sanguine person is more outgoing, more optimistic, fun-loving. They enjoy socialization and making new friends. And a choleric person is more confident, more ambitious, more decisive, and they like to take charge and take more risks. So imagine for a moment you are a sanguine and she is a choleric, or vice versa. You can switch genders, right? A sanguine-choleric relationship can be exciting and dynamic, but also challenging. The sanguine partner, if you are the sanguine person, you may feel neglected or controlled because the choleric person always wants to tell you what to do, where we should go, what we should eat, how we should live our lives. So if you do not ask yourself this question of how well do our personalities match, you are bound to continually have problems. I was dealing with a situation where the lady is choleric, they are married now, and the guy is a phlegmatic sanguine. The lady is constantly losing it because the guy takes forever to take a decision. He's not bothered. He can't, phlegmatics are really not moved by anything. He's not bothered by the number of people who have spoken, social reputation. He matches to the beat of his own drum. So in a relationship that will end in marriage, you need to ask yourself, how do our personalities match? But Uncle Josh, how do I know this when I just meet the person? That is why you need to take time to become friends with the person first. You shouldn't be proposing to someone you don't know. So get to know the person. And there's nothing wrong with going out on a couple of dates with someone and realizing that this person is not the kind of person I want to be with. All right? This is the Marriage Clinic podcast, a podcast about love, marriage, and your personal development. Please keep sharing this content. Please keep giving it to people. It's going to help them become better people. Which brings me to the next one. That is, the person you're looking at or considering or asking yourself if they are marriage material brings me to the second question you should ask. Question number 2. Are they passionate about marriage or passionate about a wedding? Are they passionate about marriage or passionate about a wedding? Because you see, there's this sweet spot that people get into. For ladies, the pressure begins to build somewhere from 28 all the way to 35. From 35, it is all systems go. For a guy, the pressure begins to build between 30 to 32, where people begin to question you about marriage and when are you settling down and do you have someone? I want grandchildren to put on my lap, and are you a responsible man? So you need to be able to differentiate between the person you want to date or the person that's showing interest. Does the person want to get married or the person is concerned about marriage? And too many people want a wedding and not marriage. So they get married and they still want to live as if they are not married. So someone who wants a wedding and not a marriage is someone who is just considered about the title. I want to be a Mrs. I want to have a ring on my finger. I want them to say I'm a responsible man. I want to begin to have children. That is different from wanting a marriage. A marriage is a lifelong commitment that requires love, trust, and sacrifice. Okay? A wedding is a one-time event that celebrates the union of two people. So which one do you want? You see, some people may focus more on the wedding than on the marriage. That's okay. It's important to find out. You need to find out if the person who is interested in you is concerned about a marriage or a wedding. Let me give you some examples that will help you because I can see the questions in your mind already. So how do I really tell if it is me she loves or it is a wedding she wants. These are some things you need to ask yourself. How serious is the person about building a lasting relationship? Okay. How much is the person serious about building how serious is the person about building a lasting relationship and not just the celebration? Because listen to this, a person who is passionate about marriage will show interest in your future plans, your goals, and your dreams. A person who is concerned about the wedding does not really think about those things. They will also support you in your personal and professional growth. So you could be dating someone who is concerned, who wants a marriage, and you are thinking about going back to school, and the person is like, you know what? It's a 6-month course you're going to do. Let's push the wedding a little bit and you go do because the person understands that we are going to do life after this. All right. A person who is more interested in the wedding will talk more about the details of the ceremony, the dress, the cake, what are we wearing, rather than the details of life after the wedding. All right. And they may put pressure. One way you can know if someone is more interested in a wedding over a marriage is when they are willing to sacrifice all your savings for the ceremony, forgetting that there's life after the ceremony. So when you hear him or you hear her pushing for you to spend so much and not thinking so much about what you will do after the ceremony, it says a lot about if the person is thinking about it. When the person is determined to be married no matter the red flags they see in the relationship, you know that the person is thinking more about a wedding. Sometimes to avoid conflict or disappointment, you should communicate openly and honestly with your partner about your expectations and your preference for the wedding and the marriage. This has been the Marriage Clinic Podcast, a podcast about love, marriage, and your personal development. My name is Dr. Joshua Mogri. It has been a pleasure being here with you, and we will be back with Ask Uncle Josh. See you soon. Okay, so we are back with Ask Uncle Josh. Welcome back. Here I have a very interesting question from Doris. Doris says, "Dear Uncle Josh, I've been listening to your podcast and I am really enjoying it. But I do have this question. What is the right time to date? What is the right time to date?" When you say date, I'm thinking you mean go into a relationship. I don't think maybe what's the right time to have a date like morning, afternoon, or evening, or things like that. So Doris, this is a question I've answered several times, and if you listen to the other podcast, probably you will hear me talk about it from time to time. But let me give you a simple answer. The right time to date, especially if you are looking at a commitment that should lead to marriage, is not so much tied to age, but tied more to certain benchmarks. Number one, you should have healed from your emotional traumas and insecurities and built yourself up to be confident before you go into a relationship. I believe you can only give the best version of yourself in a relationship when you have worked through the issues you are dealing with. The second thing is that if you are considering marriage, you should begin a serious relationship. My rule of thumb, which is not law, is that it's best to go into a relationship when you have within 2 years of wanting to settle down into marriage. Because there are so many people who do a lot of aimless dating at the early stages when they are nowhere close to marriage, and they lock themselves up with one person. The person wastes their time, or they waste each other's time for 4 or 5 years, and then they break up and they haven't had the opportunity to meet and interact with a lot of people. So I advise that start dating or go into a committed one-on-one relationship when it's about 2 years to a period where you are ready to get married.